going to share my screen.
There we go. Cool. And Kathy's joining us possibly. This is something that Kathy's sort of been leading, this conversation around community facilities. So
yes, I'm here.
thanks, Kathy.
Kia ora, everybody. Thank you so much for making this happen. We're really excited about the kōrero today.
Kathy's had to drive back from Dunedin on her deathbed today to be here. So that's how important it is for Kathy. Okay, floor is yours.
We're here today to talk about our community spaces project that started a few months ago, but really has probably been something that's been in officers' minds for a long time regarding some of the challenges we've been experiencing with requests for land, buildings and things to go on land, probably through a multitude of channels, including elected members. So really we're just here today to talk about an exercise to identify and make sure we've got a clear process for all of those requests coming through, both for officers and for those who are asking for that contribution to the organisation. So Phoebe's just going to take us through some slides. So if we can just go through the slides, there's not too many of them, and then we'd love to have a discussion about where we're heading with this. Thanks.
Oh, doing things now. I'm Phoebe, so I'm part of the business process team, which is part of the wider organisation performance team. We're a team of core who partner with different areas of council to work on business process improvements and trying to reduce pain points for us all. So we were brought in to work alongside the community services and property team, including parks and community partnerships, to look at the way the request for long-term use of council spaces, land facilities is managed and assessed. So as you probably know, we're lacking a consistent and transparent process for managing these requests from the community, and they're coming in all different ways through multiple staff members and different touch points of the council. So there's uncertainty in the community about how to actually contact us to talk about community space requests, and then also on the other side there's confusion with staff as to how to manage these requests when they come in, and to keep track of what advice has already been given and giving that advice in a consistent way. So it's been difficult without a clear framework in place to manage these requests. So that's what we're hoping to improve. We want to align with best practice principles in setting up a community spaces program. So that will support good governance of community spaces program. And also management of expectations is really important in how we communicate with community groups, so everyone's receiving consistent messaging, the same information in a fair way, and avoiding false expectations, because the demands exceeding what the opportunities are. So we want to make sure that has been communicated in a fair and consistent way to community members. So the recommendations in this project is to establish one clear entry point of contact to make things clearer for groups to know how to contact us, clear pathways for the groups, this decision-making framework, and fair and transparent communication. So just going into some of those recommendations a little bit more. So the single point of entry, so we're going to use an online inquiry form using a system that we've already got called Smarty Grants, which is in place at the moment for our grants management, and have one dedicated staff member managing those online inquiries and responding. If there's any more complex inquiries that come through, which do come through, we would look into assigning a relationship manager within staff for those ones that already have a connection and relationship that's been built with that community group. So if we have that one point of entry, that will reduce that confusion about how to contact council. As far as the comms goes, we have in development a new web page for information. which will have a link to this online inquiry form. So that will be improved transparency and a bit of self-service as well for community groups that can get that guideline information as well. And we're going to have templated responses for council staff, including our frontline customer services staff, or anyone that receives these types of inquiries. So everyone's receiving the same information and people connected to that point on the website where everyone will be funneled through.
Nice.
Yeah. And alongside this, we are developing up a set of interim guidelines to set out this inquiry process and talk through the, there are spaces that are available, how those might be allocated in the interim. So it's an interim guideline and process because there's an overarching policy development that's underway that will actually sit above this work eventually. So again, we'll be working towards a set of more permanent guidelines that will complement that policy when it gets approved. So on the new inquiry process, as I mentioned, there's one point of contact, which is the community investment advisor, Ross. Yes.
Just while we're here, our new community investment advisor is Nicole Wyant. So just so you know who that single point of contact is, Nicole's been with us a few weeks now to go over from Jeff.
Welcome, kia ora, welcome.
So we'll have Nicole in place to manage those online inquiries as they come through. So the inquiry form's ready to go. It's been tested internally and externally by a couple of community groups as well, and had some good feedback on that. The online inquiry form has some basic screening questions which will help us categorise and manage these requests. But basically there'll be better oversight of what's coming through, and we'll be able to tell if there's any collaboration opportunities, for example, or what those needs are in an easier way. We're also proposing some regular reporting up to yourselves and the Community Environment Committee. So we're looking at being more transparent about the types of requests that are coming through and the advice that's been provided to those groups, and any kind of gaps or trends, so that elected members are across the requests that we're getting from groups and what we've been told. So this is just a little snapshot of the current requests that we've had. What we're planning to do as part of the implementation of the new process is work through these requests and contact the community groups for updated information and to check where they're sitting now, and then they'll be incorporated into the new process so they can be consistently considered and worked through as well. So we will be contacting these groups in the next few weeks. So next is on the 1st of September, there's a workshop on this draft community investment policy that I mentioned. So that's being workshopped with elected members on the 1st, and I understand this board has been invited to attend that workshop, which is great, and we'll be talking through this process again. And then taking into account any feedback from that workshop, we intend to launch this new process around the 7th of September, which will be the live inquiry form and the new way of managing incoming requests and reporting. So it'd be great to have some questions or feedback. I did have a question for the group around that reporting. If there's anything that you would particularly like in terms of the cadence of reporting or the type of reporting that we provide, if it's a workshop update or a written report, if there's any guidance about that.
So this will be through community facilities, won't it? I mean, through community services, I mean. Yeah, so we've already got a mechanism that where we get updated by community services on a quarterly basis. A lot of that is parks focused, but it does include libraries and things like that. I would suggest it's another slide on that. Just these are inquiries that we've had. These are connections that we made. I don't know what that reporting is. So I think we've already got a structure for that to be visible to us without having to create another new workshop or anything. That's Ken's team leads that. Well, Dave leads a lot of it, but broader.
Yeah, it'd be good, Chair. We can incorporate that. You know, that to save us having a replicated wheel.
No, you don't. Not at all.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a couple of questions around, and I know Kathy that you'll probably have some comments as well. We're focusing really on the demand side here. Like this is a very demand side. Community wants space. Community wants something from council. When are we going to look and say these are our assets? These are underutilized assets. This is a spare land. This is building. I don't know. To sort of try and see where the imbalance is between the demand side and the supply side.
Chair, as you'll know, that is a complex situation. There isn't a lot of land available, and the pieces of land we do have at the moment are often contested by more than one group who are maybe interested in that piece of land. What we want to do through this process is ensure that if something becomes available, when we identify an opportunity, that it's fairly considered and made available to those groups that may have an interest or may appropriately meet that need. There are a number of leases and licenses. Obviously, Matt is at the table because he's our detailed expert on a lot of them. But there's a lot of them. They all have different nuances to the type of land it is, what the purpose of that land is. And at the moment, there's a couple that are, for example, the site next to the Mac School. That is of interest to a number of groups. What is the process we'll be following to ensure that there is a fair consideration of how that land is used? So that's the other step in the process.
I hear what you're saying, but in the absence of having visibility on that, one of the key principles was creating clear expectations. So if we're not aware of what the supply side is and just the potential there, I'm not sure how we can do expectation setting. It's like, there's a case of, it's viable, or you're dreaming sort of thing, because I feel like we do need to do it. Yes, everyone will have its nuance and things change and everything else like that, but I do think we just need a little bit of scoping to sort of say, actually, in reality, here is some opportunity, and a lot of it is land-based, as we know, because if we talk about physical facilities, they need to be based somewhere. I just feel that there needs to be like a top-down as well as bottom-up approach there to try and set expectations around there, rather than hey, that's really interesting, we'll let you know when something comes available. It's like, well, if that's impossible because we just don't own land that size or of that scope, or it's we have to buy that land, I think that sort of sets the expectations.
Yeah, I can speak to that a wee bit. Like we're through the property team and the parks team as well, like the majority of land we have is reserve land. There's limited freehold land. So reserve land adds added restrictions to land in terms of what can be done and what can't be done on reserve land. So I wouldn't say constantly, but we assess what land we have available, especially when we have applications. We can see, is there anything that matches this, or is it suitable? And sometimes if there's an application that is suitable to reserve land, that opens the door to a lot more parcels of land. If it's not a use that's compatible to reserve land, there's a lot less opportunities or non-opportunities. So the classification, and most of our land, as I say, is reserve. And so if we're looking for activities that are not compatible with reserve land, there are very limited opportunities, especially in the upper Clutha. Like non-reserve land there's not much of it. So there is some. There is some. There is some. But I agree, like we use software within the property team that has a record of all our parcels of land. And we're constantly going through that, refining that information and making sure that it's classified correctly. And if there are opportunities, we can help identify them through that process.
That was an idea that I'd just leave with you. Who else has got Cody and then John?
The direction I've given to staff around deficits of infrastructure is map the gaps. So for me, I always like, in terms of reporting, how we present it visually, and whether that's showing on a map where the parcels of land that we have to accommodate are and how big they are, and also attach them to the groups that have lobbied us for it. Totally supportive of the sentiment, because yesterday we're at Abbeyfield they were saying, hey, we want the plantation road, but a land, but I'm sure there's other people also wanting all the same thing. So to make it connected to the context is really important for me to understand. But appreciate the other sentiment I was going to raise is that sports fields have sports teams have this as well, where they all get together and then try and lobby for each individual, turf or lighting or, stuff. One of the great processes of getting people together is they see each other's needs and they go, oh, actually the netball club have been here for decades and they really need something, and they're able to put aside sort of some of their own ambitions and recognize context. So I don't know if there's a way to facilitate that with community groups where they can all sort of learn from each other based on needs and then find a way to, even if it's timing, it's not like 100% dedicated. But to help facilitate that through this process would be great.
And the chair, yes, that's absolutely an element we have been talking about. This first phase is for us to get, I suppose, our house in order around what the ask is, but there is definitely, there are a reasonable number of leases and licenses across the district that many have been there for a long time. Matt works on a lot of those relationships with those leaseholders, but that is a conversation we would like to have with a number of them. Is, are there opportunities? Do you know that there's these other groups? Are there any alignment opportunities with how you're currently using your lease? We would like to have those conversations with community groups that are already using available land and facilities, because that is an opportunity that we have explored or help facilitate in a consistent way, I suppose. So.
I guess one more point I'd love to highlight is to celebrate the partnerships that we do have often. QLDC has funded the land for this, because we've done so much, and I learned in this role just how much the community's reinvested in these spaces. But as soon as it's done, the credit's just wiped, and now it's a problem. So celebrate.
Can you give us an example, Cody?
Well, we went to Abbeyfield yesterday. It was provided by the council in 2007. It was an incredible piece of land that's helping people for the last 20 years. And you wouldn't know that unless you went there and asked about it. And throughout all of the facilities it provide, Nicola and I had this conversation about what does the local government actually do? And it's like, get everything outside of your house, pretty much all of that.
Preschool,
Exactly.
preschool, Mac Foundation, hostel.
Yeah. I think there's so much that we do, and it's worth recognizing and celebrating that in this process. So that actually, when you look at the partnerships that we have had, it's a really great story to celebrate.
John, and then I'll come back to Kathy.
Yeah, I'm just interested in how you will deal with the 62 that are currently in process. Will they be fed into this new assessment system so they can all be judged equally at the same time, or will they be continued in the process as they already are?
Are you okay? Yeah, look, absolutely, through the chair. They'll all be coming through the same door, same form. We are gathering a reasonable amount of information, but we've tried not to gather too much information in this, if you like, the first inquiry stage. So this isn't an expression of interest for anything. It's just telling us whether you have a need. So it isn't about being assessed. It's at this stage necessarily. There will be a level of assessment, as in there'll be some potentially obvious ones that will go, actually, this wouldn't be something council would be able to help with, but we're pretty sure most of the ones that are on the list at the moment would be something council may want to consider.
So will you be inputting them into that system yourself? Or
we'd ideally like them to do it, but we'll assist them. So we'll be making a phone call and working with them to fill in the form and assist if they need it.
Kathy.
Thank you. I want to go back to Simon sort of asking about reactive versus proactive. And I think what he's indicating is that there is a real desire on our behalf to drive a strategic, proactive approach to this. So, and a collaborative one. And Marie, you've certainly indicated that that's, on your minds as well, obviously. And I think to Cody's point, we have been collaborative over the years already. I think this process is going to put us in a really great spot to be able to manage that even better. But I do think that doing a really comprehensive piece of work around stakeholder and asset mapping is absolutely a key step in this. As previously discussed and offered in one of our meetings, Ken and Phoebe and Simon, you'll recall my kind of raising that and saying, look, if it needs, I'm happy to do it. This is so important to actually get the community groups in the room. And then the other piece of the puzzle could be our private developers and how they're considering or might want to consider community space facility needs in their future planning. So I think, there's just going to be a lot of support from us to looking at this collaboratively and proactively and not only reacting to requests. And as everyone's been saying, we can't, just because we have this process doesn't mean we can magic up new land. So it means it's even more precious what we do have. I wondered whether your statistics include the sport and rec requests to date as well.
Yes, they do. Yep.
I figured they did, but just wanted to verify that. And yeah, I just want to say in general, thank you very much for the mahi in this space. I do recognize and want to mihi the whole team and all the people you've drawn into this process, because it's been a long-term one and well worth the wait. I know, I'm not even hoping, I'm sure it will be. So thank you for getting it in place, and we really look forward to hearing how it progresses and really want to keep working with you closely to make sure it's a success.
Thank you, Kathy. Can I just welcome John Mitchell, Councillor John Mitchell. Thanks for joining us, John. I've got something related to what Kathy said. Do you want to?
Would you like to say it and then I can come back to you, both?
That would be good. I just want to challenge Kathy a little bit around we're not creating more land, and I personally think that's the wrong way. So I'd like to really empower you, Matt, to think a little bit about it. We're thinking very constricted. This is the land we've got, most of it's reserve land. We can't do anything about it. Well, we can. We can change reserve status. That's not necessarily applicable or right or whatever, but it is something we can look at. That we can look at land swaps. We can say Tempe Street doesn't work as well for us, so where can we do a land swap there? Look at the fact that we've got a national park and where dock is at the moment that made sense maybe 30 years ago where the dock offices, and probably isn't the best use of Crown public land at the moment. I know you're chuckling, but so how can we create, how can we be the conduit, because we are here to work for the community? How can we be the conduit with local developers and be supporting them? There's land contributions and all those sorts of things, but I'd like us to change that mindset rather than saying we've got a very finite amount of land and we've just got to move that. It's not finite, it's just constrained, or it's thought about in a certain way. I do think we have to approach the supply side, because we are growing as a community and we are here to help support and empower community organisations. We need to be as innovative as we can to help play a supporting role for them. Got one other question, but I'll throw it to you, Ken, because you might have something to say.
Just in the context of time, thank you, Chair. Simon and Kathy, it's actually really good to be in your community board today, because the growing pressure does require us to look to the future about how we take the current list as well as what we know will be coming at us and how we position for that growth, as you've rightly touched on. And even within the context of recent weeks, we've been working alongside some of the key initiatives come out of the annual plan. Arts Cultural Trust, for example, they're working very hard on identifying appropriate sites which will need to come across this table, and there's every chance they'll conflict with existing planning. So what we need to be across is how we actually work with a lot of parties and make sure there is a process, but also get on the front foot at some point so we understand what the growth opportunities. And I think you've summed it up really well. Part of that is when do you start doing a different dance, looking to get a different result. And for a long time now, we've been trying to get a different result with the same inputs. And even if they have that Matthew wears, within our leases or our reserve management plan, there's a lot placed back on the tenant to actually make sure that they are consistently reporting their membership, the use of the facilities, and is there opportunity to partner to other parties. There's some real subtlety in that, and we see it done well with some parties, and then others there's probably opportunities. So there's everything, as you've rightly put out, in terms of land and opportunity, right through to existing facilities, and then how are we going to actually get on the front foot with that future proof?
We've got an asset sales reserve that's sitting at north of 10 mil. We can buy land. Okay, so have we thought about that? Where it's a really strategic pace that's
yes, we have.
Yeah, exactly. So there, I'm just saying there's other levers. The other thing I would just ask about is, and I think I've run it past Marie. I'm not sure if I ran it past you. What is the thinking from council about council, i.e., community-owned facilities, but they are community operated? And just to put that in a practical terms, the numerous conversations I have had with substantive Upper Clutha community groups that have got the funding and the initiative to run and operate hubs facilities, but would need the capital input, are resistant to moving into council operated facilities because they feel that they can do it better and more efficiently than everything else like that. So what is stopping us from building a building and a community group operating that building? Whereas our natural default position is that if we own it as council, we run it.
I don't think we've actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, but through the chair, I don't think we've actually necessarily had that clear discussion as a policy setting in any way that we necessarily do one or the other. My understanding is for some facilities, there have been facilities at times that were going to be run by a community and then for various reasons came into council operation. I think when that opportunity arises, we will be looking at pros and cons of both. I think it will depend on who's running the facility and whether they have the means and the ability to do that effectively alongside what council could produce. And I would consider that as part of a feasibility, on a detailed feasibility of anything as significant as a large investment like a hub.
So I could just say, Kim, so I could go back to the community groups and say that we are open-minded about council owned facilities or buildings or places that can be decoupled from who actually operates them.
So could you go back to those groups? Yes, you could, Chair. And I'm just trying to think, we've got an existing example. One of the establishment managers is in the room around Te Atamira. We have a prime example of that. Yeah, we're involved with that trust. We continue to work and operate alongside them, and that's completely administered by a standalone entity that engages at least 26 community groups through the art sector. And it's, a long-term commitment around a lease. So you're very much right. There is existing models within our framework. And I think actually for the future, as we all know, with the fiscal challenge, potential for some real reform to come through on the back of the 7 November outcomes, these will be the conversations that are going to need to shape the outcomes for communities, because councils aren't going to necessarily have the available funds.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, and sorry because I'm ignorant of this because it's in Wānaka-Upper. Does council own Te Atamira?
We lease it, but we're a facility for a 10-year period.
Yeah, so that's slightly different. We don't own it. Yeah,
But it was a response to a capital commitment at the time.
Good point. So we've got a little bit there.
And we've done some stuff with the community hub, and there's others along the history of touch points. And Whakakuku Hub, they were part of an ERY for land back about 5 years ago for what they're looking to do. So there's been varying examples,
right,
but just not on scale.
Quentin?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I mean, firstly, just going to that operation model. I mean, I think Haria Community Centre is a classic example. While it was sort of funded and built in part by them, or at least expanded, it's probably the most successful community facility in the district because there's a real strong sense of ownership and in the success of that. And so, just encourage that different types of models can succeed, and that's a great example of it. The other, and no question, the strategic approach is a good one, and we have to take a big picture view. I just don't want that to replace a little bit of agility in being able to make decisions where they make sense. And I mean, I can think of, without wanting to wade too deeply into the example, I think the Abbeyfield land in Wānaka is probably a good one in that we've got an unusual piece of land, we've got a very clear proposal, we don't have other conflicting uses at this point. We could go looking for them, we could go trying to invent them, but if there's political will, strong justification, I'd like to think we can sometimes get on and make decisions on things as well. And so I'm just torn a little bit there. I don't want us to be 5 years down the track before we can make a decision on something like that. I think we can bring those to the fore. And there was an example I discussed with Ken recently around a lease that council hold. I won't disclose which one, but it was like, for me, we could make business cases and whatever, but there's also a pretty clear decision we can make and move on, without getting caught up in it. So I just want us to sometimes have a bit of trust in our conviction and be able to make decisions and move on sometimes. So,
just through you, Chair, quickly, Councillor, I think that's the classic case of a problem shared as a problem halved, and that's where this table would be an important contributor to how we take some of these critical conversations forward. I think a number of them get stuck on the shoulders of staff looking to do the right thing, quite a bit of pressure to bear, but we need to make sure we daylight these conversations consistently through this. 2 quick points to note in the next steps. Part of the policy framework is actually looking at the 2014 land acquisition piece that we actually have as a standing, which comes back to York, and then the 2019 facilities policy, looking at how we frame them together. That's the 1st of September's update, because they both go hand in hand to your point, Simon, and also Kathy's, about how do you take forward future proofing as well as reacting to what we currently have.
Going to draw to a close. Anything? Right.
Oh, I was just going to, through the chair, just, what we're trying to do here isn't create more blocks for this. This is about, ultimately, whatever the process is, the idea is to have more transparency around the decision, and the fact that if a decision is made in a particular direction, that we're acknowledging that there are other factors that may, or other groups that may not have that opportunity. So,
I'm really excited about this piece of work, because when we as a community board set, our 10 sort of priorities October last year, that whole thing around community facilities is a key driver for us, and it's driven through the asset sales reserve. I'd like to think that we played a small part in sort of expediting this conversation, and we're really happy where it has landed, because you're exactly right, Maureen. There needs to be agility and pragmatism, but there also needs to be, very clear expectations, exactly what your principals say for the community, and particularly in the Upper Clutha. So we appreciate this work. We're really excited to hear what's going to happen from the 1st of September. I know there's community groups in here that probably are partly going, this is good, but it doesn't solve our immediate problem, and we will continue to strongly advocate for those with immediate needs. But we've got to look at this as that this problem is not going away, and we've got to be setting up these things. So for those community groups in 5, 10, 15, 20 years time, we've sort of paved the way for them. So thanks for your hard work, Phoebe. Thanks for your hard work you're doing. Cool.
Thank you.
Cheers, team. Kate and Dave from Community League. Great to see you guys. Thanks. Oh, okay. Yeah, cool. So there is a little technical thing here, is that we are putting a break in the workshop, so we will stop the